Real. All right. Hello, and thank you for coming, and thank you for coming. I am super excited. This is one of my favorite topics. They all are favorite topics, but this one is kind of interesting because there's just so many misconceptions about this. And we're going to talk about cholesterol today. And I'm Dr. Sten Ekberg. This is in the clinic Wellness for Life. We do neurologically and nutritionally based chiropractic. So we specialize in getting to the root of things and handling the underlying cause rather than just treating symptoms. And cholesterol, I call it the good, the bad, and the necessary, because once people talk about cholesterol, you always hear, oh, this is good cholesterol, this is bad cholesterol. We're going to clear that up and find out that it's mostly necessary. So first we're going to cover what is it, what does it do, is it natural, is it good or bad, and why it's the greatest myth since low-fat diets. So if you go to I think a lot of the world is catching on that fat is not evil, but yet you go to the grocery store and the entire dairy section is no fat, low fat, etc. So cholesterol, the whole idea about fat and cholesterol started back in 1948 when they started the Framingham study. So during the 50s, this idea took hold. And it's based on a notion that was very poorly researched. So there was a fact that they found in Framingham, and the first fact was that people with heart disease sometimes had higher cholesterol than healthy people. Not always. Sometimes people with heart disease had extremely low, and sometimes people with high cholesterol had no problem. But sometimes they had higher cholesterol. And second, they found in those plaques that clog up the blood vessels that cause heart disease, they found that those contained cholesterol. So that was a first strike against cholesterol. And then they found that sick people usually have a higher ratio of LDL to HDL cholesterol. So they have too much LDL and not enough HDL. So based on this, they drew some conclusions, and they said cholesterol causes heart disease, LDL is bad, and HDL is good. So we're going to look at a couple of flaws here. That they only observed a correlation. Okay? They observed heart disease and cholesterol. They didn't know if they had anything to do with each other. They just kind of observed that there was a correlation. And then they assumed that there was a causative connection, that one caused the other. And nobody asked, well, if cholesterol is so bad, why does the body manufacture it? Why does the liver keep making something that's so bad? So I want to use an analogy, and now we're going to talk about traffic. So have you ever been out driving and all of a sudden things are flowing and moving and all of a sudden everything slows down and now you're stuck for the next hour or two? What happened? There's probably an accident, right? Would you agree? Mm-hmm. That's typically, yeah. And then finally, when it clears up and you start moving along in snail speed, once you get up to the point where it starts clearing up, you always find police there, right? Blue blinking lights, sometimes there's a fire truck there as well. So I'm thinking that there's a correlation there, that anytime there's a traffic accident, there's a police there. So I'm assuming that police cause traffic accidents, because I've never seen an exception. They always go together. That must be true, right? Okay, so it's the same exact story, that if we just observe things together that have no causative relationship at all, but we might, if we don't understand the purpose of police there, we might assume that they cause it. So that is exactly how flimsy the connection is between cholesterol and heart disease. Okay? So now we all know that there's bad police, bad fire department, just like they call bad cholesterol, right? Okay, not so much. So then they looked at fat. And this was a few years later, and this is a famous study called the 7 Countries Study. And Ansel Keys was the key person. He was very energetic, very persuasive, and he was on the Nutrition Advisory Committee of the American Heart Association. And he found, he studied some data from different countries, and he published a study, and in the 7 country study, it showed clearly that high fat intake caused a high rate of heart disease. So people looked at the study and they say, oh, that's pretty plain, that's clear enough, case closed. But then some people started looking a little bit further because it didn't quite make sense. And they found that there were actually 22 countries available. There were data from 22 countries, and Ansel Keys just picked the 7 that fit his idea. The things that made that he had an idea, and whatever countries fit that and made him look good, he picked those 7 countries. But when they looked at all 22 countries, there was no correlation at all, none whatsoever. In fact, Finland was in the study as an example of high fat and lots of heart disease. But then they had Germany that ate the same amount of fat as Finland, but they had 1/3 the rate of heart disease. But that didn't fit his idea, so let's not include that country. And then Switzerland and Netherlands ate even more fat than Finland, and they still had 1/3 the rate of heart disease. So we got these ideas. To this day, most people you ask, they think that fat is bad, and it's based on association and correlation that's not even sound most of the time. So we're going to look at where does cholesterol come from in the body. So we eat on average about 200 to 300 milligrams of cholesterol. And this cholesterol we eat, it comes in a form that's called esterified. So it's like the chemical composition is called an ester. And it's a little difficult for the body to use and absorb. So it's not enough. The body can use some of it, but it's not enough. And this by itself wouldn't even be close because we need a whole lot more. So the body goes through a lot of trouble. It's a very complex process, 37 steps. And then the liver makes another 1,000 milligrams of cholesterol every day. So if you eat more cholesterol, the body can use some of it and it can make less. If you eat less, the liver makes more. So it turns out that ingested cholesterol has nothing to do with blood cholesterol. And still, it's in the official guidelines from 50 years to this day, they recommend limit your intake of cholesterol. There's absolutely no evidence ever to support that. The gallbladder uses cholesterol in bile, so part of your ability to digest fats come from bile, and this is so precious that the body reabsorbs 50% of it. So let's not waste this precious substance. Let's reabsorb as much as we can so we don't have to waste energy making more. So again, dietary cholesterol has nothing to do with blood cholesterol. And even Ansel Keys 50 years ago knew this, but they consistently ignore the physiology and the logic and the data. And even in the face of evidence, it's like everyone goes back and says, oh, but we all know fat is bad. Like, yeah, but here's the evidence. Okay, I believe you, but we all know fat is bad. That's how it's opinion. It's opinion, it's not fact. So why does the body need cholesterol? Well, cholesterol is a hormone precursor. Your ovaries, your testes, your adrenals. Are hormones important? Okay, it's not a small deal. Vitamin D. It's been shown to be a lack of vitamin D is associated with virtually every disease there is now. It's a hugely important vitamin, which is actually a type of hormone. The body needs cholesterol for it. Digestion, bile in the liver, and it's a component of cell membranes. Your brain is 60 to 70% fat, and 25% of that fat is cholesterol. You think the body makes that by mistake? Okay, brain's not important. It probably doesn't know where to put the cholesterol, right? The brain depends on cholesterol for the permeability and the fluidity of the cell membranes. So the very signaling and regulation of your nervous system, everything that makes you work, every signal that balances and heals and maintains homeostasis and helps you think and focus, all of that, the signaling itself of the nervous system depends on cholesterol giving those membranes a certain characteristic. And a lack of cholesterol is linked to depression. And cholesterol is absolutely crucial for making myelin. And myelin is a fatty substance that insulates the nerves from each other. And a lack, when you have like multiple sclerosis, then the myelin gets attacked and you get cross-firing of signals because the nerves aren't insulated anymore. So myelin is hugely important. And a baby's brain is about the quarter weight of an adult, but they have more brain cells. The difference is myelin. As we grow the brain, we make more insulation. We develop the function of the brain based on myelin, which is mostly cholesterol. Okay? So cholesterol is not a mistake. It's not a stupid thing. It's involved in just about every life-sustaining function in the body. So there's a reason your body makes it. And then we go and say, oh, bad cholesterol, the lower the better. I think not. So what about HDL and LDL? Is there good and bad? They are simply transport vehicles. Okay, they're carriers. HDL means high density lipoprotein and low density lipoprotein. They just have different compositions and they have different sizes, and that's why we call them different things. But it's sort of like a bus. And the LDL, it delivers cholesterol to the tissues where they're needed, and HDL picks up the surplus. So it's sort of like a bus. If you need to deliver people, then you put the people on the bus, and then along the way, if the bus is really, really full, like LDL is really full of cholesterol, so some of it spills over the sides, okay? It's like delivering, the bus is delivering. And then when the bus is empty, that's the HDL. So now some of the cholesterol wants to come back, so now the empty bus goes out and picks it up. So it's not good or bad, it is appropriate when depending on the need, all right? The body makes exactly what it needs. So what is it needed for? Primarily, other than the things we talked about on the previous page, we need it to repair inflammatory damage. So in your blood vessels, if you have inflammation and damage, then the cholesterol is like putty. It goes in and repairs the damage. And if you have a lot of damage, it's going to put on a lot of putty, and now you get the plaques. But the cholesterol isn't the problem, the damage, the inflammation is. So what causes the damage? Stress, toxins, grain, sugar, drugs, insulin. That's why there's no difference really in this disease process than there is from high blood pressure or diabetes, because it's the same causative factors. And that's why people who start on one medication usually gets on all the others. So we're going to get technical for just a second. So if you want to tune out for a minute, this is the time. So it's more than HDL and LDL. There's subtypes. So there's a large HDL called HDL2. This is the best one. It's highly anti-inflammatory, very protective, anti-plaquing. More is better. Then there is HDL3. This is small and dense. It's poorly understood, but we think that we want less. Then there's LDLA, which is a big, fluffy, harmless thing until it's damaged by inflammation, and now it can cause some damage. Then there's LDLB, which is small and dense. It causes plaquing. And then there's the tiniest called LPA. It's very small, but it's there to repair damage in the blood vessels like we talked about. So if you're healthy, if you're clean, if you're not inflamed, then you're just going to have a little bit of damage. You will need few repairs, and your LPA is going to be low. Okay? If you're unhealthy, you're going to have lots of damage, and you're going to have lots of repairs, so your LPA is going to be high, and you're going to have excess plaquing. So, and there's not really categories like this even. They just have to call them something. There's a full range of different sizes and different composition and different percentages. And the body just makes exactly what it needs to. Then humans go there and look, and we like to classify things and call them good and bad. But the body makes exactly what it needs to for each occasion. So just to simplify the subtypes, there are a large HDL that's good. There's a large LDL that's good. There is a small HDL that's bad, and there's a small LDL that's bad. So basically, it's not whether it's HDL or LDL even, it is the size. So the body makes these based on need for hormones, structural components, the need to repair, etc. If you need lots of repair, you make lots of the small ones, and then we get the blood test back, and we go, oh no, bad cholesterol. No, it's all good cholesterol because it's better to repair it than not to repair it. If you break your leg, you'd rather be in the hospital and have someone put a cast on it than not. That doesn't make the hospital bad, but it'd be nicer if you didn't break your leg in the first place, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here too. The cholesterol is just there because it's needed for various different functions. Same thing here, little repair, looks good. Saturated fat, evil, right? Now, even if certain fats can be good, obviously saturated fat has to be bad, doesn't it? It increases cholesterol. Oh no, that's bad. Well, it increases the large lipoproteins. So that's a good thing. And again, it's not good. It means if you're healthy, you're going to have more of these. Okay? And what it means is if you eat saturated fats, then you're healthy. And then you're going to make more of the things that we think are good. It decreases the bad lipoproteins. And I put all of these in quotation marks, and you get tired of me saying good and bad. But the body doesn't do anything bad. It can't. It's all on purpose. Every bit of it is on purpose. So there has never, ever, ever, ever been any causative relationship found between saturated fat and disease. Never, ever. Not a bit. Not even a little bit. Okay? What does matter is the quality of fat. Okay? So it needs to be whole natural fats, things like butter from a healthy cow, the meat fat from healthy cows and lambs and pigs and fish, coconut oil, very saturated, very healthy, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. So as long as they're natural in their natural context and humans haven't destroyed them or altered or changed them, then they're good. So now let's say that we have a question.
What about if it's inherited? You're gonna go over that?
I wasn't going to do that, but let's talk about that. So they blame a lot of things on genetics. There is one type of people, there's a category of people who have a completely inherited, a severe dysfunction in fat metabolism, and it's called Familial Hypercholesterolemia. And they're extremely rare. I don't know the number, but I would think it's less than 1%, just guessing. So for those people, they're just really unfortunate. It's just like anyone else who has an inherited genetic defect. Someone who has an inborn metabolism of error where you can't make something. You're actually really missing a gene, so everything goes haywire. But those are extremely small percentage, and everyone else that they try to tell you that, and the familial hypercholesterolemia, their cholesterol is going to run in the 700, 800, 1500. They're going to go absolutely crazy numbers. But if your number is 250 and they blame it on genetics, then they are not understanding what we're talking about. Okay, so everyone else is going to be covered under what we talk about. All right? So let's say that now your cholesterol is a little high, that you think, okay, well, 280, it's maybe not so good, or my ratio, which we're going to cover later, is a little bit out of hand. Then there's two ways to change these. And the first way is to get healthy. Once you get healthy, your body will make only as much as it needs in the exact right ratios. And the second way to change them is to use poison, and that's called a statin drug. And the statin drug goes in and it destroys the body's ability to make it. It interferes, it blocks a crucial step in the liver in the manufacturing of cholesterol. And once you start interfering with the body, you get even sicker. The cholesterol goes down, but it looks like a success when you run the blood test. If you're only looking myopically on the cholesterol on the blood test, on the total number, then it looks like a success. But you are getting sicker, absolutely guaranteed. You get less cholesterol on the blood test and you die from something else sooner. Statin side effects, there's thousands of them. We're just going to cover some basic principles here. Liver damage, muscle damage, and the biggest muscle, most important muscle is the heart. Memory, concentration, depression, pain, peripheral neuropathy, sleep problems, sexual dysfunction, fatigue. And here's the mechanism for most of this. This is absolutely guaranteed because the pathway that blocks the manufacture of cholesterol also blocks the manufacture of CoQ10. And this is one of your most crucial enzymes because this enzyme is involved in the production of energy. So every cell in your body makes CoQ10, but you make the most in the organs that are the most active, the ones that need the most energy. And which ones are those? Liver, heart, and brain. So here you have liver, heart, and brain. Okay? So if you haven't fixed, if you're still on a cholesterol drug and you haven't addressed, if you haven't gotten healthy so you feel you have to be on it for a little bit longer, the very least that you have to do is get on massive, massive doses of CoQ10. Have to. Okay, promise me that. So let's talk a little about meta-studies. What's a meta-study? It is where someone goes in after the fact and you look at a bunch of different studies. You go through the literature and you look at, okay, I want to know about cholesterol. I want to know about saturated fats. You go and you read up, you gather all of the data that has been done in a time period, and you look at all of it so that you can get a consensus of sort of the overall effects. So they did this in Japan, and they wanted to look at cholesterol, and they said, well, let's not just look at heart disease, but let's look at if cholesterol is important, what happens to all-cause mortality, meaning the things that you die from for any reason at all. So they found 5 studies. There were 9 studies originally that had more than 5,000 people and that were done after 1995, but they had to discard 4 of them because they weren't properly done. There was inconsistent data gathering in theirs. But 5 studies that had each more than 5,000 people. So overall, it was over 150,000 people that they followed over 5 years. And here's what they expected to find in the study. So they knew that lower cholesterol was better. So under 160, they said, was optimal. That's where they try to tell people, oh, you're 180 now, but keep taking your medication. See if we can get you down under 160, because that's optimal. And then they had a group 160 to 199 that was desirable, and then 200 to 240 was at risk, and then the people 240 and over that were just like ticking time bombs, right? And this is what they expected, and that is exactly what they didn't find. So when they did this study, and again, 150,000 people, they looked at every study that had been done after 1995. And again, we had these categories, and what they found was that the people over 240 had less cases of death than these guys. And these guys had less death than these guys. And these guys had less death than that one. So the sickest people, the most mortality of all cause, was in what they thought was optimal. And they have other studies where they study people in their later in life at 75, 80 years old, and they find that because cholesterol is so crucial to brain function, that there's virtually no dementia in the people with high cholesterol. They have the best cognitive function of anybody is people over 240. So traditional risk factors, these are things that they say, oh, if you have these, that's a risk factor. You really have to watch out. Or this is, and risk factors, they're really, really sort of irrelevant, because what you really want to find out are the causes. Okay? So here's the risk factors. Being male, like, sorry, strike one. Don't do that. Okay? But it's a correlation. It's not a risk factor. It's not a cause. You are what you are. Smoking. This is indeed a risk factor. It's a cause because it creates toxicity and low oxygen delivery. Hypertension, it's not a risk factor. It's a correlation. It's another effect. Diabetes, it's another correlation. It's an effect. It's not a cause. Family history, may or may not, if you have that familial hypercholesterolemia. Other than that, they're trying to scare you for no reason. A lot of times people, oh, your grandfather had high cholesterol. Well, yours is still normal, but take these statin drugs in just in case. I mean, preventative. Okay, it's criminal. If your HDL is less than 35, then that is indeed not good, but it's a correlation. It's an effect. Low HDL is an effect of something else. Severe obesity, not a cause, it's a correlation. And dietary cholesterol has absolutely nothing to do with it. So everything that they say traditionally, they're not the causes. and we are interested in the causes. The real risk factors and causes are inflammation. So if you have inflammation, your body's going to make more cholesterol. Okay? Cholesterol isn't bad, it's the inflammation that's bad. Don't worry about the cholesterol, fix the inflammation. And inflammation, the number one inflammatory agent in modern people is insulin. And insulin is caused by carbohydrates, sugar, starch, and grains. Allergies, if you're allergic to something, then that's going to create inflammation. The top things people are allergic to are grains and processed dairy. Chemical stress, sugar, toxins, and other stress, emotional stress even, also causes inflammation. So these are the only real, not the only, because we're not done with the risk, but these are the real risk factors, and these are the things that cause inflammation. And again, there's probably more stuff. And high triglycerides, okay, that is a cause, but it in turn is caused by sugar, carbohydrate, and insulin. Degeneration caused by toxicity, deficiency, and disuse. So if your heart starts to degenerate, if it doesn't get the nutrients, if it has too much stress, if you don't provide for it, then it's going to degenerate and get weaker, and that's part of why hearts fail also. So a lot of people ask about blood work, and it gets super, super complicated, and you get pages and pages of all these tiny little cholesterol particles and 1,000 different things. So we're just going to look at 3 ratios, and you can order these tests most places for like $30 and get all the information that you would need, and then some. So as far as cholesterol, the simplest and best rule of thumb is to take your total cholesterol and divide it by your HDL, okay? So an example would be if your total cholesterol is 210 over 70, your ratio is 3, and you're gonna be fine, okay? 210 is not a problem in any way. However, if it was 210 over 30, now you'd be in trouble because you have an imbalance. Now your ratio would be 7, and the sweet spot is right at 3. So if you have 240 over 80, you're still at 3, okay? No worries. Don't let anyone tell you that you need a cholesterol medication or that you even have any kind of problem. You have balance. And this is probably what these people have that get into their 80s with full cognitive function. They probably just have a really good HDL number. However, if you have 180 over 45, now this isn't like super bad, but it's starting to go in the wrong direction. So even though this is in the healthy range, this person is not as healthy as that person, right? So just take your total cholesterol divided by HDL, and you have a really good landmark. Over 5, I don't remember the numbers, they'll print them oftentimes on your blood work, but I think over 5 is like a double or triple your risk of heart disease. If you're less than 3, you're going to do really well. Another one that you can check is triglycerides over HDL. And triglycerides, that's the actual fat that's swimming around in your bloodstream. And some of it you get from the food that you eat, but most of it you get from sugar. So here's the mechanism for that. If you eat a bunch of sugar and you get insulin resistant, the insulin, if you're insulin resistant, the insulin can't get that sugar out of the bloodstream. That's an emergency. So the body has to do something else with the sugar. So the liver converts the sugar into triglycerides. And this is very, very expensive. It uses a lot of energy, and that's why people get sleepy after eating a large meal, especially with a lot of carbohydrates. because the liver is busy pulling energy into converting sugar into triglycerides. And now you have triglycerides swimming around in your bloodstream. So it's sugar, carbs, and insulin that causes high triglycerides. Okay? And if you divide that by a health marker, again, it's not good or bad, it's just an indicator that you're doing well, then an example would be 120 over 40. Well, 40 isn't so good. 3 is much too high. Okay? This number is too high. If your triglycerides are way up there, 250, but your HDL is better, well, it didn't help you much. You're still in trouble. If you are, here's the sweet spot. 90 is a really good triglyceride number, and 80 is a really good HDL number. That puts you about a little over 1, right? So over 2 is at high risk for heart disease, inflammation. Sweet spot is between 1 and 1.5. And these values are included on just about every blood chemistry profile. And another one is triglycerides over total cholesterol. If you're suspecting that you are insulin resistant, then this can be a good way of measuring that. So again, a really nice number would be 75 over 200, and you're really low on the ratio. 120 over 180, your triglycerides are starting to get up there, but you're still okay. But if you get up to 300 over 220, if your triglycerides are bigger than your total cholesterol, then you have a very good chance of being pretty insulin resistant. So anything over 1 would indicate, and not by itself, but it indicates insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, and that you're well on your way to all of these metabolic diseases. So greater than 1 insulin resistance, sweet spot in the low range, like 0.4, 0.5. All right, very simple. Now, so you would think, with things being this obvious, that we would have some intelligent guidelines. So all of our friendly government agencies, and I looked this up on the Mayo Clinic website as late as today, they all subscribe to the current guidelines, which is the 8th edition, which covers our best advice from 2015 to 2020. And they say that you should eat, a healthy diet should include lots of grains. Okay, at least 50% of them should be whole grain, which we know makes absolutely no difference in your insulin response. None. Okay? Even whole grain has a higher insulin response, higher glycemic index than pure table sugar. Okay? You can, not that I recommend white sugar because it's bad for all kinds of reasons, but from an insulin perspective, you're better off spooning sugar out of the bag than you are eating whole grains. And they say a healthy diet includes plenty of it. And they say have a good amount of fat-free dairy. The absolute worst kind of dairy, the hardest processed, they've taken out every little bit of it that was good for you. They killed off the enzymes, they killed off the bacteria, and that is what they recommend that you should have. Of course, we know if you're going to have dairy, it should be full fat, it should be alive. So, of course, we're not allowed to recommend raw milk, but you can get it for your pets, and maybe they'll let you sneak some when they're not watching. Yogurt is a live food. It has brought back, you have sown seeds, you have grown seeds of enzymes and lactobacillus that are going to be helping you digest the food, and that's beneficial for your gut flora as well. Soy products and fortified soy beverages. So these are all the things that you should eat plenty. Okay? Soy is one of the worst foods out there. It is such a common food allergy, food intolerance, and all the cultures that traditionally eat soy, they never, ever, ever eat it without fermenting it. Okay, fermented soy means you add bacteria, you add cultures that help you break it down and digest it. So it's kind of like the milk. If you kill it, it will kill you. If it's alive, it's a reasonably good food. So fermented things like tofu and soy sauce and tempeh and miso and so forth, those are fermented so your body can tolerate them. But when they talk about soy products and fortified soy beverages, they're talking about the most sterile synthetic version of soy available, soy protein isolate. That is in just about any processed food product out there. Vegetable oils. That's the only thing that could possibly compete with sugar for the worst food in the world. Okay, and of course they use that vegetable oil to make mayonnaise, because even though polyunsaturated fatty acids can act as messengers and they have a role in very, very small amounts, they were never intended for fuel. Okay, we get them from plants, we get them in very, very small amounts, and then we get them in the right proportions. But when we manufacture them, these oils are very, very unstable. So in order to give them shelf life, they have to kill them. They heat them up to super, super, super high temperature where they're smoking and foaming, and then they're so toxic they have to bleach them, they have to degum them, they have to filter them, they have to do all sorts of things to bring it back to something that has no taste, so that you can put it on the shelf for a year. And this has been implicated in so many diseases that it's not even funny. I'm not kidding, it is right up there as the worst food in the world. And then of course they tell you to limit saturated fat. We know that saturated fat improves the cholesterol, the good cholesterol. We know there's never been a link between saturated fat and any disease. We know that humans for tens of thousands of years have lived primarily off of saturated fat. But hey, don't eat it. Don't eat it. And they tell you to have 45 to 65% carbohydrate. And this is signed off by the USDA, the American Heart Association, the American Diabetic Association, and the Mayo Clinic. I've checked them recently. And this amounts on 2,000 calories, that's 225 to 325 grams a day. Guaranteed to cause insulin resistance. And if you're insulin resistant, that will guaranteed drive you into diabetes. Okay, maybe not 100% of people, but the majority. If you eat 3,000 calories, that means 337 to 487 grams of carbs. Okay, I eat about 3,000 calories a day, and I eat about 35, 40 grams of carbs a day. Okay, and I don't have high cholesterol. I don't have insulin resistance. Now here's the best part. I couldn't believe this. I looked this up today, and this is from, they actually publish, the government publishes Dietary Guidelines, edition 8, 2015, and in here they said that here is our recommendation, and we have also done a survey to see how many people are actually following our guidelines. And this is like, I don't know, from just a gift. And according to their research, people are getting better and better at following the guidelines. So why isn't it working? If they were telling people the right thing and people were following the guidelines, shouldn't people get healthier? Shouldn't we reverse diabetes? Shouldn't we get fewer people that are obese? Shouldn't we get healthier? Then why is it going the wrong way? Wouldn't you look at this and say, we're publishing guidelines. They're following our guidelines and they're getting sicker. All right, let's keep doing that. It's just me. And then this is the diet part, and they didn't have as much data, but they said that even the exercise, people are doing better. So they say that, oh, you have to eat right and you have to exercise more. Well, people are doing that according to their numbers, and they're following their guidelines. Maybe we should look at doing something different. You think? So here's part of the problem, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you kind of have to be just a little bit. You have to start asking, well, if it is this screwed up and no one is thinking, then is there someone who stands to gain from it staying this way? So here's the American Diabetes Association, and here are the top sponsors, the top donors who donate money for the maintenance and for the furtherance and for the research of these organizations. So that these don't do so much research, but they have information campaigns, and they have employees, and they have an agenda. So here are all the pharmaceutical companies that make diabetic medication. Do you think they wanted to get better? And here are the food: Hershey's, Kraft, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Cadbury, Schweppes. This is the largest manufacturer of candy and soda in the world. And they were the biggest contributors to the American Diabetes Association until 2006, because somebody protested and said, now you just have to shape up. We know you like to take money, but hey, you can't take it from these people. So in 2006 they stopped, but they're still taking the pharmaceutical money. And is the Academy for Nutrition and Dietetics. And they're sponsored by Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Abbott Nutrition, who makes Ensure, Unilever, who makes margarine, ice cream, and mayonnaise. The American Heart Association is sponsored by all of the same pharmaceutical companies, plus Pfizer, Bristol-Myers, and Medtronics. And they're sponsored by General Mills, Kellogg's, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Cargill, and Post. So in around 1985, they decided, hey, people are having so much heart disease, we need to help them along. We need to let them know which products are low fat so that we can help them with making heart healthy choices. So here are the heart healthy choices approved. They got the little green stamp by the American Heart Association. Berry Berry Kicks, Count Chocula, Cocoa Frosted Flakes, Fruity Marshmallow Krispies, Honey Nut Cheerios, and low-fat Pop-Tarts. This is good, healthy food. If you want to protect your heart, you have plenty of this. It should be part of a healthy diet. Unfortunately, lettuce, kale, onion, bell pepper, grass-fed beef, and wild-caught fish didn't make the cut because no one paid for it. So these are heart healthy approved by the American Heart Association, and these got no stamp of approval. So let's go eat, let's stay healthy and eat lots and lots of sugar and chemicals and artificial colors. Okay? So let's talk about some real solutions. If inflammation is causing it, let's reduce inflammation. How do we do that? We reduce insulin by cutting carbohydrates, grain, and processed dairy. And if you've watched several of these and you think it sounds like I'm saying the same thing, it's because I'm saying the same thing. Okay? There isn't 50,000 diseases out there. There is only one disease, and it's called lack of function. Health is when things work. Disease is when they don't work. So let's restore function. Okay? There is not, it's a mythology, it's a myth, it's a religion to have all these tens of thousands of different conditions. And again, who stands to gain from that? Pharmaceutical companies that can make 50,000 different medications, and they can spend $1 billion in developing each, and then they have to jack up the prices to recoup all their costs. Reduce chemical stress, lower triglycerides, reduce sugar, carbohydrates, and insulin. So does it look like it's coming back to sugar? Okay. Insulin has been linked to every single degenerative disease condition that there is. And reverse degeneration. So again, in chiropractic, we talk about emotional, chemical, and structural mechanical. So that is what humans are. Our organism is influenced by all of these. If we find balance, if we provide what the body needs in all those areas, then we will have health. You reverse degeneration, restore normal function. Again, just a little rehash here. Eat better, whole, innate food. Whatever humans have eaten for tens of thousands of years, whatever humans have eaten as we have developed parallel to nature, just like all the other animals on the planet. Giraffes eat giraffe food, and turtles eat turtle food, and fish eat fish food, and humans are supposed to eat human food. Okay? A little bit of everything from the earth, okay? Not from packages. Move better. Chiropractic, exercise. Movement provides signals. That's the purpose of movement. Signals from movement is the #1 nutrient for the brain along with oxygen. And exercise provides both. Feel better. Reduce emotional stress. So whatever it takes, read a good book, read an uplifting book, Bible, personal growth, meditate, do breathing exercises, dance, watch a funny movie. Find some balance in life and learn how to feel good. So find balance between emotional, chemical, structural, eat better, move better, feel better. It's a choice that we can make, and it is the only thing that can restore normal function. Once we've restored normal function, then we don't have to worry about those 50,000 conditions because they will go away. The body can heal anything. There's no condition that the body hasn't healed. Humans have recovered from every single condition there was. So the healing mechanism is built in. It's already there. All we have to do is restore normal function. So again, in this office, 80-90% of people will get better just by eating better, moving better, feeling better. But then there's a percentage of people that have either a complicated background or have had some trauma or have just more complications where there's just not quite enough. And then nutrition response testing can help find those hidden pieces, find those little things that keep the body from moving forward. So let's do a quick little demo here. Do you mind being on camera?
No.
No? Okay, come on. This is Nora. Good to see you. So face this way. And so real quick, muscle testing is a push on the bone is held up by a muscle, the muscle is controlled by a signal from the brain. It's not a strength test, it's a precision test. Match my pressure. So I'm only pushing with about 1 pound, but I can tell that it's rigid, okay? It's not going anywhere. Now move your right leg forward, a little bit more, there. We start with 1 ounce, we increase slowly, we feel for the lock, but there is no lock, okay? So step back, move the left leg forward, and hold, and now we get a lock because the brain recognizes a gait pattern. When one leg is forward, the opposite arm is supposed to be forward. When it makes sense, the brain fires with precision. When it doesn't make sense, the brain shuts off. So we use this to ask the body questions. Anytime we put pressure on an area, we stress it a little bit, and if that stress is more than the brain likes, then we get a change. Okay? So we're just going to check a few things here. And there's not with autoimmunity, we kind of know where to go. With cholesterol, because it isn't a disease, because it isn't a problem, there's not really a specific thing to look for. So if you have inflammation and overall body stress, then there's a number of things we can check, but there's nothing really specific. Okay? So we'll check a little bit here. So match for me. Okay? Now we're going to check frontal lobe. That's good. Hold. Top of the brain, crown. Okay? So this is actually one of the things I was going to mention that could be, because crown is very often related to sugar cravings and sugar imbalances. So again, it's still several steps to develop cholesterol imbalance, but it is one of the spots that we would probably look for. And hold nice and strong. Okay, that one's good. And then anything hormonal. So here is pituitary, hypothalamus, thyroid. Okay. Again, thyroid is one of the most sensitive organs. It's the most common one that we find. And both lungs, I wouldn't expect to find. You said something about blood pressure, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So there is actually a blood pressure spot, and it sits right on the inside of the upper arm, kind of in the flat portion here. So if we put a little pressure there and hold, okay, and we get a response, okay. Another point that we can check is midline on the rib cage over the heart, and we go down 3 ribs and hold, and that one's good. That's the master circulation point. So if there's circulatory issues as a result of some kind of heart stress, then that might show up. Another one I would want to check is pancreas. Hold. That one's good. I would want to check adrenals and hold. And there we have some stress. Adrenals handle stress, physical stress, emotional stress, and they do it whenever you have stress. Your body wants more energy to deal with the stress. So the adrenals make cortisol, which primary purpose is to raise blood sugar. Okay. And hold. And the other adrenal shows up as well. Then I would also want to check liver and hold. And liver is fine. Hold. Gallbladder. So there's more stuff we can check, but those would be the primary things that I would sort of associate with a cholesterol or an inflammation issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then the next step would be to test what kind of nutrients would reverse those weaknesses. And again, we would have some idea of what to try, but the body ultimately tells us what's going to work. So I'm Dr. Ekberg. We have another doctor in here called Dr. Colby Smith. We are chiropractors, nutrition response testing practitioners. And one of the most important things when we talk about nutrition is to understand that since 1950, when the pharmaceutical companies discovered how to make synthetic vitamins, the vast majority of everything we buy in the vitamin stores are synthetic. They are small fractions. They are the antioxidant portion of the vitamin complex. They're not the nutrient, they're the protector of the nutrient. So vitamin C is not ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid was put in to protect the vitamin C complex, and it's there to protect the plant, not to protect you. So it's a big transition for people to understand that. But the one company that still makes whole food supplements, they're processed from whole food, they remove water and fiber, they process below body temperature, so all the complexes, all the enzymes, all the cofactors are still alive like they were in the food. That is about 80–90% of what we do here. And they have some unique properties that we just can't find anywhere else. Because it's whole food, they are safe, there are no side effects. Not like your statin drugs that basically shut you down from the inside out. So that's all we had for you. I hope that was informative. I had fun because I don't know if I were crying, but it's so clear cut. It is so obvious. It is so outrageous what we're doing to people. The official guidelines are just in direct contradiction of everything that we understand about physiology. I mean, everyone knows, no one will dispute that insulin is inflammatory. No one will dispute that insulin is a problem. And everyone knows that eating carbohydrate raises insulin. I mean, that should be enough. And then all the research that links insulin to every disease there is, don't know what to say, except we do these seminars to save lives. And 95% of the population will die prematurely from not knowing the things that we talk about. So if you visualize 20 people that you care about, 19 of them will suffer endlessly, needlessly, and they will die early, and before they die, they will have a long period of suffering and medication and expensive bills. And all of that is unnecessary. So that's why I urge you to share this information, tell people about this, bring people to these seminars, grab them by the neck hair, and because they need it. Not everyone will follow through, but at least they deserve to understand a little bit more. So, do we have any questions on that?
Okay, so explain whole food supplements, and that there are some that aren't, even though they say they are, right?
Yes. So it is very difficult. Most of the good nutrition research was done before 1950, because after that, when they started making synthetics, then everybody just went toward pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals and the synthetic stuff. But they had a few precious years before where standard process was around. And that's why, again, standard process is quite unique. So anything can be called natural if it has up to 10% of something natural in it. And it doesn't even mean that it has to have a lot of nutrients. You can take a green plant and dry it and grind it up, and there's mostly fiber in there, but it looks green. And if it's 10% of the product, you can call it natural, and it says it has extracts from all these different things. So it's not easy to find good nutrients. That's, again, most chiropractors will carry, a lot of medical doctors, especially holistic ones, will carry some standard process. So if they know what they're doing, they can give you some guidance in regards to which might be helpful. And other than that, it is so important to understand that the food, the quality of the food, even more so than which items we eat. It's not about vegetables versus meat versus dairy versus whatever. It's about the quality of those. Yes, we want to reduce carbs, but after that, we want to get things that grew in healthy soil. We want to get meat from animals that lived a healthy life. So it is unfortunately the principles are easy. Carrying them out is difficult because the world has changed to the point where it's hard. some people say that, oh, well, you guys are so extreme, no one can live that extremely. But it's not what we're talking about that's extreme. What's extreme is how much we have changed everything that nature took millions of years to fine-tune and develop, and we turn it upside down in 50 years. The topsoil is half the thickness, there are no minerals in the soil, 50,000 items in the grocery store, and 100 of them are food. So what we have done is the extreme part. We just need to unextreme it and go back to the way that we're supposed to live.
Is there a list, a website video on plant-based vitamins?
I don't know, honestly.
But I just said that you recommend standard.
Yes. I would definitely go with standard process because most chiropractors have it. And if they have just a little bit, they may not know a lot about it. So find someone who carries a lot of it. And there's going to be someone near you that does, because there's like 60,000 chiropractors. So I imagine there's 10,000 chiropractors that actually know a good bit, not super much, but they'll have some knowledge about the difference in standard process. So try to find those.
Off topic.
Natural pain relief from cysts on uterus. A lot of uterus and ovary problems. Let me get some water, please. I got a bottle right there. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is almost entirely a sugar problem. If we go the standard process route, I haven't tried this extensively, but I just learned that they have a product called chlorophyll complex that is something of a miracle pain reliever. And their chlorophyll, again, is entirely unique. It's the only truly fat-soluble chlorophyll product in the world. There are some that say that they're fat-soluble, but they make it water-soluble first and then dilute it in oil, and they ruined it. Chlorophyll is interesting because it can do amazing things in the human body. It is only one atom away from being human hemoglobin. So 85% of the cells in your body are red blood cells, and they're packed full of hemoglobin, which is the oxygen carrying compound in your body. And chlorophyll, the only difference between chlorophyll and hemoglobin is that chlorophyll has one magnesium atom and hemoglobin has an iron atom. So by putting chlorophyll in your body, and this is not the only way, but all your body has to do is remove one magnesium and put in one iron, and you've got hemoglobin that's ready to go straight into the red blood cell. The pain relief factor, I don't know the mechanism, and even the manufacturer doesn't really know, but it's been known to be quite powerful. And it also is a great wound healer. If you take a little bit of that and you rub it on a wound or a burn, the pain is known to go away almost instantly, and it speeds up the healing dramatically. It's also a great cleansing agent, especially for spleen. So I'm still learning more about chlorophyll, but it's a very interesting product. Any more questions? So that looks like that's all. Do you have a question? No? So we don't have any more scheduled seminars right now. We will do one next Wednesday this time. We're still waiting for requests on topics, and if we get enough requests, we'll probably throw in some between now and Wednesday also, but we've done a lot of these, and maybe a little bit too many too close together. So we want to give people a little bit of time to digest this and give us some feedback and have some requests, and then we'll start it up again. Not every day, but several times a week, several seminars. Okay. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.